Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Motor Recon podcast. I'm your host, Adam. I'm joined again today by Rob, as you will see up there. What we're going to do today is actually a topic that's been recommended by a subscriber called Gear Shifters on Instagram. So if you don't already, go and follow him. I'll put his link on the screen now. So thank you very much for the topic. What he's asked us to do is look at some cars that we think will become future classics that are currently either on sale now or have just recently come off sale. That we think will in the future be the likes of, your Ferrari F40s or your Sierra Cosworths, things like that, which obviously have all shot up in value recently. So I thought that was actually a great idea. And the first one I'm actually going to kick off with is a Ford. So one I think will happen with the Focus RS, particularly the Mark III. Now, Ford have announced they're not doing a fourth generation Focus RS, so it's already the last of the line in that sense. It's a very much sought after car. They've held the value quite well, and it's arguably the best hot hatch on the market, or was the best hatch on the market according to most of the reviewers, magazines, Top Gear, and all that kind of thing. So it's got the performance, it's got the people wanting the car, and in reality, they didn't actually make that many. Particularly if you look at the Red Edition, Blue Edition, Heritage. So the Heritage only had 50 of them produced. So
yeah, I would say that if you were to pick out the range and say which one's the one, even of the Focus RS, which one's going to be the one that, if it's as will be a classic, it'll be the Focus RS Heritage.
yeah,
And let's not forget as well, Ford has pedigree on sort of having hot hatches going to be genuine classics. You look at the Sierra Cosworth or the Escort Cosworth, for example. They have pedigree.
The old school Fiestas and Escort Mexicos and all that kind of thing, they've all come on. So people at the time who couldn't afford them or were kids at the time and obviously couldn't drive, now they've got a bit of money and now they can drive. They are starting to pick up these classics. And obviously I've seen Sierra Cosworths go now for over $100,000, which is obscene. And I've already seen a Focus RS advertised, the Heritage one advertised at $100,000. Whether it's sold or not is another matter, but I've seen one go for over $60,000. So it's more than 20 on the list already.
And I think that's the thing. It's not a stretch to believe, because we have seen fast forwards go up so much in value in the past. So yeah, I can very much see the Focus RS becoming an all-time classic. And like you say, because they recently announced that they're not going to be continuing the RS line with future Focuses, I think that will just add to the poignancy of the last one.
Yeah, which I think it's got. Yeah, so it's got all the makings for it. I think the particular as well, the Mark II Focus RS is already starting to creep back up in value, and they are sought after. But because this is the last of the line, I think this will be the one to have.
I'm not entirely sure about Ford's decision to not make any more of them. I think it does their brand a world of good. It appeals to their core fan base.
Yeah, they've never had trouble selling them, have they? They're waiting lists on the RSs. I think
But I think it also helps them shift normal Focuses.
Well, yeah, but do you know what I think they potentially might do off the back of this? This is wishful thinking, because they might not do the Focus RS anymore, because they're citing its sort of emissions regulations and things like that that's going to stop them doing it. They might do a Fiesta RS. I've heard snifflings of this for ages. It's never come to fruition, and Ford keeps saying no. But if they can't do it with a Focus, with a bigger engine and make it 300 odd horsepower or whatever, they could make a smaller RS version of a Fiesta.
But you see, it's a slightly contradictory sort of argument, though, I think. Because obviously the new Fiesta the new Focus ST, doesn't that have a larger capacity engine than the outgoing Focus ST, the previous gen?
I think so, yeah. Which does seem
because it used the engine that was from the old Focus RS, with it detuned, doesn't it?
Yeah, so it is slightly counterintuitive.
So, I don't know. Actually, I wish they didn't retire the brand entirely. If it was an emissions reason why they got rid of it, I think it would have been better to find a way through potential mild hybridization or whatever to get the speed in there while also meeting your emission targets.
Yeah, innovate, don't sack it off. But
yeah,
it was their decision. You never know. They've said this before after a long time of not having any RS models until they brought back the first RS version. So
exactly,
it's potentially it could come back again. It's just one of them things. So okay, so that's my first option. What do you think? What's any in your basket that you think might become a future classic?
So I think sticking with regular sort of road cars, my first choice would be the Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio.
That's probably a good.
Obviously,
shout.
That's currently on sale today. It is the darling of all motoring magazines, so it's got that pedigree with it already as seen as an excellent fast saloon, and it's the first truly great Alfa Romeo for a long time.
Oh yeah, a long time. I say it's got everything about it, hasn't it? It's got the looks, it's got the power, it's got the prestige. Like people actually like it and want one. And
It's a unique Alfa Romeo as well because you get everything that you want from it without a lot of the drawbacks that come with an Alfa. You're not making excuses for it. It's genuinely brilliant.
and I think as well, it's got the makings of like what happened with us because buy one brand new, they are actually quite expensive, and particularly the new GTA model of whatever they're doing of it now, like they're quite expensive to buy, so not many people can actually afford them. So they're not selling many of them. So the numbers are they are keeping low, which is a good thing as well if you want to become a classic in the future, perhaps.
Yeah, and as you say as well, people will look at this as basically Alfa Romeo's return to form.
Yeah, and they just need to keep it up, which I hope.
Yeah, fingers crossed this will start a lineage of excellent cars that might go on for decades,
Yeah.
and I hope that is true.
Yeah, because it's not a name you want to see go, is it? So.
Well, as you say as well, because although the Stelvio isn't up my street, it's not my type of car, I respect that for what it is a good car.
Yeah, it is, and arguably some of their other cars that they've done in the past were similar, but this is the one that's really got people's attention back on the brand.
Oh yeah, this is the one that took it to the M3 and beat it.
Oh yeah, I'd take that over an M3, not even a question asked. I hate
so yeah
the BMWs. So yeah, that's.
I actually think it's a bit of a closed deal that it's going to end up a future classic. To be honest,
Yeah, I agree. All the people who can't afford them now in the future, if they do pretty well, I think it's going to start happening. I think.
Yeah.
Another one I'm going to go off now. Sorry to sort of repeat the same book here, but I'm going to go with the Fiesta ST Performance Edition. Particularly, I think the normal one and the ST200 from the Mark 7 as well. But the PE's got the makings of everything that could become a future classic. Like we said before, the old Fiestas now, they are sort of a good nick one now. You can pay over 20, 30 grand for them. And they certainly weren't that new, so they're as expensive as a new Fiesta now. But limited to 600, very, very low numbers. Obviously quite unique from the standard car, being bright orange with the lovely dark wheels. It's got the new fully adjustable suspension. It's got Ford did it properly with this. They focused on the handling rather than adding more and more power like other people seem to be doing. They focused on the handling, and that's what's the selling point on this car. And also,
well, that's the thing you can actually use in the real world.
Yeah,
its feel and how fun it is to drive. Not necessarily really beyond a certain point. It is no longer how quickly it'll go in a straight line because it doesn't really matter if it's quick enough. That in the real world, that's all you can use. So handling feel and how fun it is and playfulness is probably more important than outright performance, to be honest.
Absolutely. And when it comes to a hot hatch, that should be the only aim. The people now, like in Audis and Mercedes, adding like nearly 400 brake horsepower into a hot hatch.
Well, it's bred a new type of hatchback. They're called super hatches, aren't they? Yeah. We've basically got a new category for extremely powerful hatchbacks, and don't get me wrong, they are very impressive, but I can't actually use it in the real world.
No, and they say like they don't handle anywhere near as well. They're not as fun to drive because most of the time you can't even get them in a manual gearbox. They've done this properly and that's why I think it will become the classic. Because people like myself, like I'm hopefully going to get one next year or the year after, providing everything goes well. And I plan on keeping that car and eventually having it as a second car.
I would say that as much as I do like the Mark 8 Fiesta ST Performance, if I was to say which one they're going to become a classic in the future, I would actually say the Mark 7 Fiesta ST. For my logic being that the Mark 5 Fiesta ST wasn't the best in class. It was quite heavy and apparently quite a bugger in the corners.
I've driven one, to be fair. It was quite slow.
And it wasn't the best in class. Like, I much prefer from that era the Renault Clio 182, for example, which I might add. I feel that's a future classic and all.
Absolutely, but yeah.
But for the Mark 7 Fiesta, that was when Ford showed the world they still had it.
Yeah.
That was a return to form.
I think it'll be the ST200 variant of the Mark 7 that will be the one that sort of people want to get. But I do agree with you on that front. I just think the PE edition of this generation ST, because there's so little of them, I say only 600 of them, and with all the fully adjustable suspension, they've done everything right. They've focused purely on one thing, which is handling. And
it's one of the few cars, I agree with you. One of the few cars in the world with that performance Fiesta that I don't think I dislike anything about it.
No. Some people might argue the colour's a bit garish, but I don't mind that. It's meant to be a bit in your face, isn't it? That's
a fast Ford.
Yeah, fast Fords have always done that. The old RS, they did it in like that neon green, and then they've done this one in like brown. So perfectly fine by me.
That's a fast Ford. Yeah. So I agree. That is a classic.
But anyway, so on to the next one. What's your next option?
So sticking with the sort of conventional pricing and things like that and sort of normal cars, I'm going to go with the Hyundai i30N Performance as my next choice. The reason why I'm going for this is not obviously the Fiesta was Ford proving they still had it. This was Hyundai basically making their massive entrance into the market of we can do this.
Yeah, saying look, here we are. This is what we're doing.
They listen to and that's the thing. Whereas you've got people like Audi and Mercedes who've gone off and made super hatches with excellent sort of automatic gearboxes, Hyundai, I feel, listened to what the driving enthusiast for a hot hatch wanted.
Yeah,
I want a 6-speed manual. Doesn't need a crazy amount of power. Needs to be fun in the corners. I think that they actually listen to what their potential market wants, which always baffles me why it wasn't I don't think it was a particularly good sale. I don't think they sold particularly well.
Well, they're still selling them now, and they don't really. The offers you can get on them now, purely on the basis I think that they're not selling, is why I think they will become a future classic as well. Because, like you said, there's hardly any knocking around. People potentially might not be able to afford one now that would one. Like, I'd have one in a heartbeat if the Fiesta ST didn't exist.
Oh yeah. I think that though this is Hyundai introducing themselves to the just the fast car market in general. Yeah. They could go anywhere from here.
Because unfortunately, we never got the Veloster N in the UK. I don't think. I think they had it in America and a few other countries, but that one wouldn't, I don't think, become a future classic because it's very limited and it's not really a proper hatchback. It's a little bit fussy. The i30 is a proper usable car like the Focus RS or the Focus ST or anything like that. And like you say, it's got a cult following as well already. There's people that absolutely adore these cars. It's loved by every reviewer that ever drives one. So,
yeah, I would say that as well. And again, it showed that Hyundai could not necessarily matching the sort of Volkswagen and Golf GTIs in terms of interior design and infotainment, but it can match them. Yeah, but they can match them on performance, and they'll give it to you at a cheaper price as well. So
yeah, arguably a better car. A lot of people who have driven, a couple of people at work who actually have them, and two of them swapped from a Golf GTI to an i30N and have absolutely zero regrets. So
yeah, so I love it, and I think that is a potential one.
Yeah. Okay, so next one is we're going to go slightly up the game a bit now. So one that I think it's already kind of getting there now, but the McLaren 675 LT. Now, this for me is, other than the P1, my favourite McLaren, on the basis that it was very raw, extremely fast, still usable as a car, but this is the one that people have described as that the last good McLaren before they started having a lot of problems, which obviously I'm sure you're all well aware of. But this is the one that even people who aren't really McLaren fans buy and actually want. And there's a few people knocking on YouTube, as you've probably seen, TGE, a few others, who slate McLaren left, right and centre, but are actively trying to buy one of these.
I feel that it's the 675 LT, that's the one we're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the sweet spot, I feel, for McLaren.
Yeah.
I feel that is the sweet spot. If you looked at their entire range from 12C all the way up to, like your current Sennas or whatever, this is the spot for me where I feel like, this is McLaren. This is what they do. This is what they stand for.
Well, there was a point, obviously a bit different now in the car climate, but there was a point where these were going for double list price.
And it doesn't at all surprise me. You would argue that it's already a classic. It's not a future
Yeah,
to be.
yeah,
And I would agree.
yeah, and I think that is definitely one that's going to go sort of through the roof in terms of value later on. I don't see it ever getting to sort of your multi-million-pound prices, but they did get limited numbers of these. They didn't make many of them, um, so I think it will definitely get there. The coupe definitely more than the Spider. I don't. The Spider might do, but not on the same level. I don't think.
No, I would agree. And as you say, I think this car represents everything that's right about McLaren's road going arm.
Yeah, absolutely. And say many people are trying to get hold of these, especially now while they're a bit cheaper. Probably the perfect time to buy, should you be able to afford one.
Yep.
All right, so go on. What's your next one on that? Off the back of that one.
Well, I'm stepping up a little bit on this one. So the next one I'm going to talk about is the Alpine A110. Now, I know it's a slightly divisive car. Some people don't like the looks, some people do. But I genuinely do think that, first of all, it's the first Alpine since like the 60s. So let's start with that. It's a return to a brand that had been long since buried. Second of all, car reviewers and the car world love the way that it handles and the way that it drives.
Yeah.
And it's the first, and I think it's the first car in a very long time that can realistically take away the crown from the Cayman. As far as if you were going out to buy a mid-engine sports car, Cayman ruled the roost on that for over a decade, hasn't it? Really, it's just been, if you're going for a mid-engine sports car that's around 60k or whatever, you're going for a Cayman.
Yeah, and I think arguably a lot of people still did, even though the Alpine was there, which is why this one will become a classic. Because with the Cayman, they made too many of them. I think way too many to become a classic. Other than the GT4 variant, I don't see any of them.
And to be honest, and this is the difference though, when I see a Cayman on the street, I just don't really pay attention. When I see an Alpine A110, I stop and look. I pay attention.
Yeah. I agree. You don't see many of them, so when you do see one, like you say, it catches your eye. Cayman's 10 a penny. Even like they're too common.
And as he says, well, it's also a cracking car to drive as well, and it follows a slightly different philosophy than the Cayman as well. It's more focused on being lightweight. It has a relatively small four-cylinder engine. Now, Cayman struggled terribly when it dropped down to four cylinders. Aren't they back up to six now?
In the GT models and the GTS and the GT4, yes. I think the standard 718 still has a 4-pot, but it just...
whereas the Alpine A110 rolled out of the factory with a 4-pot, and people didn't really mind. They thought it was part of the character of the car.
Yeah, it depends how you make that engine run. When Porsche went from the 6-cylinder to the 4-cylinder, it's like, it does sound like a downgrade. But if you do it from the get-go as that, it's not. That is the car, isn't it? But
as I say, a car that is that universally loved by a lot of the motoring community, I assume has a very cult following as well, and it's sold in relatively small numbers. I see it becoming a classic.
It's got some big names who've had it as well. Like James May's got one, as he's a big motoring enthusiast, obviously, and I know the others do like it. So I'd see no reason why that wouldn't become a future classic, if I'm honest.
And I really hope they expand the Alpine brand as well beyond just the A110. I like the S, but I actually prefer the original. I feel that it isn't as hard or as track focused, and that's what I like about it.
Yeah, that's the sort of the type of car that should be, isn't it? A little bit more softer.
But it is. It's more road friendly, and fair enough. I mean, hell, it comes from a rallying background, you know.
Yeah, I agree. And the original Alpine, well, I know it's quite similar. They've gone up in value quite a bit recently, so I don't.
So yeah, I love the Alpine A110.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's not personally my taste. I would have it over a Cayman, but it's not personally my taste. But I think it will definitely become a future classic. So next one, I think I just want to quickly talk about. I know this is one you'll be very interested in. Is the Aston Martin V600?
Yeah.
Now, they only made 7 of these. Well, 7 coupes and 7 roadsters. So it's already extraordinarily limited car.
And I will add as well, we have talked about this once before on the podcast in a previous episode, and I think we came to the consensus on this one that the reason why we like it so much, and I feel that the reason it'll be a future classic, is that it's the last of the analog Astons.
Yeah, and that it really is analog because they took the V12, they give it a manual gearbox. I mean, you could get the V12 Vantage with a manual as well, but not many of them. So they gave it the manual, they gave it 600 horsepower, they gave it a really screaming V12, but they gave it the classic, very, very classy design of the Vantage and just slightly flared the wheel arches, put the little holes in the bonnet, and just made it a little bit more aggressive, but not enough to ruin the lines of the car.
It's very tasteful.
Absolutely tasteful. And all the specs that have been released for these, that people have obviously known this and spec'd them extremely well. Sort of your dark greys, your deep blues, and your silvers. Very, very classy design cars. I mean, they're already selling for over £1 million. I know they're £1 million new, but they're already selling over that now.
I think it's because it takes a period of Aston Martin that people remember very fondly, I feel. It was a return to form from, people thought the brand might die when Ford got rid of it, but it showed that they could survive on their own. I think it was a return to form for Aston. And the V600 represents, basically, they took all the bits of the car that had been, the parts bin of a generation of cars that had been around for such a long time, through the best of together. It's like a best of album, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they've done some bits like the holes in the bonnet and stuff like that came straight from the DB10, so it's got the Bond link to it there. And it was.
And as I say, it was
done by Q Branch, wasn't it? So.
And it was one of the first cars to be done by them as well. And I think it genuinely shows that. I think it's a nice celebration of that period of Aston Martin before they moved into the turbocharged new era of the DB11 and the new DBS and the new Vantage.
And the Mercedes engines.
This is the best representation of everything that was right about that generation of Aston Martins.
Absolutely. And give me £1 million and I would buy that in a heartbeat. No questions.
Me too.
No questions.
No questions on my mind.
Absolutely beautiful car. So have you got another one you want to add to that list?
I'm going to go back to McLaren briefly for my next one. And I know that this is a more sort of controversial pick. It's the McLaren Speedtail. Now,
definitely controversial.
The looks are divisive. I know that for a fact. And I know it's not the fastest car in the world and all of these sort of things. And it will never live up to its predecessor, which was obviously the McLaren F1. But I think in its own right, I suspect, like a lot of the cars we've talked about on this list, it'll probably have a cult following.
Absolutely. Well, they're only making 106 of them, is it? The same amount as they did with the F1. And to be fair, we've seen it in person twice now, and it looks a lot better in the flesh than it does in pictures. So I know a lot of people were judging it before they saw it. Same with the Senna. But once you see one in person, it did change my mind completely on the looks of it.
And it also represents a unique approach from McLaren. If you look at the entire range of road cars from McLaren, on the whole, they're more focused around sort of not necessarily track performance, but they like to be good in the corners. It's something they take great pride on. And I'm sure the Speedtail is all right in the corners, but it's the only McLaren that they have in their range that is solely focused on going in a straight line.
Yeah, well, to be fair, it kind of does take that from the original F1. The original road car F1 wasn't designed to be the best car around the track, as in the fastest and all that kind of stuff. It didn't even have a proper rear wing. It had the active aero, but it wasn't designed for that. It was designed for, it had big luggage space. It wanted to have to be a usable car as well. And I think they've mastered that trick with this one too.
That's the thing. But I'd say that from McLaren's new road range, so from the 12C onwards, this is a very unique offering out of all of these cars.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Where the 675 represents the very best that McLaren can do, I feel that the Speedtail represents something that it's a unique brief for what McLaren have done. There aren't any other McLarens that are so focused on going in a straight line.
No,
for example.
And I think as well, and because there's such limited numbers, they are only making the 106 of them.
Yeah,
that will automatically keep it just the prestige. So I would agree with you wholeheartedly on that one. And I do say I love the car, I love the brand, I love everything they do really. But that I think will become a future classic. Another one from their arch nemesis, which I think's arguably already getting there, is the Ferrari 458, the Speciale Aperta particularly, but I know the normal Speciale will. I think this one will become sort of future classic already because I've seen these sell for going up for £700,000, sometimes even a little tiny bit more. So they've already gone up massively. Very limited number anyway on the Aperta version, but it's the last naturally aspirated V8 Ferrari, well mid-engine V8 Ferrari.
Yeah. If that isn't a reason for it to be an all-time classic, I don't know what is. And frankly, I think it is. It's tough to call, but I would say that it is at least in the category of top 3. I would say for me, best Ferraris ever made.
I would agree. Personally, I think it looks better than the Pista. I think it's more angular and aggressive, which I do like. I think I've not really seen many bad specs of that car. I like it. I like the way it sounds. I don't really like the way the Pista sounds. I like the way this does. And I think that's a lot of the problem for many people. Now, I know there is a few people knocking around who bought Pistas, sold their Speciales, and then ended up selling the Pistas and buying another Speciale back.
Well, I remember, obviously, a lot of reviewers saying this as well, which was the 458 Speciale, whether it be the standard one or the Aperta, is at the point where it doesn't really get much better than that.
No. It's like you can make a car faster, sure. Like
yeah, but it's better.
Yeah, but like the way the car makes you feel, I think is the reason why this one will become the future classic, because it gives you that sense of purpose and that sense of excitement when you see one and when you hear one. And
I feel like, for me, this sits in the same category as the F40 and the 250. As Ferrari's greatest offerings.
Yeah, and to be fair, I know the F40 is arguably one of the best cars ever made, but they made over 1,000 of those, and they're still going for £1 million. The Aperta, they only made 499, so they've got a hell of a lot less of them knocking around. So the prices, astronomical. I think they're going to be in the future.
It's easily, as I say as well, it is definitely one of my favourite Ferraris of all time.
Yeah, quick, I think we've got time for one more. Do you have another on your list, or shall we go for the joint?
No, go on.
So I think the one we sort of both agreed on as we were talking about this before we started recording was the Aventador SV. Now, me personally, one of my top 5 cars, just because of the way it looks. You can argue whether cars drive better, do anything like that. But if you think of the car, when you go to London Supercar Spotting or go Monaco Supercar, anywhere, you always see Aventador SVs. That's not because I know they made a fair few of them, but people wanted them. It's the poster car. It's what everyone used to get their Instagram followers and things like that. So I think having that sort of image in like our generation or the generation below's head, once we get sort of a bit more successful and make a little bit more money and things like that, these are going to be the cars you're going to be after, rather than obviously the older generation who were getting for the Countachas and the Diablos and all that kind of stuff. This is our generation's super.
And this is the thing. It's been proven time and time again from Lamborghini that their big sort of battleship offerings of their offerings of this is our sort of flagship V12 monster from every generation that they've made them have become classics. Murcielago, classic. Countach, classic.
Yeah,
these have pedigree for getting that way.
Yeah.
I see no reason why the Aventador won't be, especially when you consider that whatever replaces the Aventador will likely have to take some sort of downsizing in engine capacity.
I think the new one they are doing, they have confirmed it as a V12. However, I think it will be hybrid, which obviously then automatically takes away a lot of the stuff. And particularly with the SVJ, so that's obviously probably going to be the last in the line for the Aventador model. A lot of people already prefer the SV because they didn't have to meet the up-to-date emissions regulations, so it's not the SVJ is quieter. I personally prefer the way it looks, to be honest. I know not a lot of people do, but I do. But it just doesn't sound as anywhere near as loud. It's just got that not as raw. So I think the SV will be the one that becomes the classic, not the SVJ.
And like I say, and because it is the end of an era, because as you say, the SVJ had to comply with new regulations that throttled it back on some of the drama that Lamborghini is famous for.
Yeah.
So you're right, the SV does represent, confirmed, the last of a generation.
Yeah.
Because the SVJ was already not as desirable as far as sound and theatre's concerned.
It's different. Like
and whatever they...
rear wheel steer and stuff like that, so it's making it more usable. A big Lamborghini should not be usable. That's the point of them. They're ridiculous on all levels, and that's what the appeal of it. It sounds daft, but that is what's the appeal.
Yep.
And
It's theatre.
Yeah, I think they absolutely nailed it with the SV. It's already got a cult following. I absolutely adore them. And I say prices have held pretty well in most cases, gone up. So it's already happening that these cars are becoming more and more sought after.
And like you say, given modern regulations as well, and the emissions criteria that Lamborghini will have to meet, and all the rest of it, it's not possible, I feel, for them to produce something that's going to be as Lamborghini-y as the old Aventador SV. I think it represents the end of a time where you could build things quite as outlandish as that.
No, I absolutely agree. And I think, to us, that's probably the perfect place to end us there with the pinnacle of this list, in my opinion, the one that will probably do the best overall, and my favourite in the list. So it's probably a good place to round us up there. Thank you again, Gear Shifters, for that topic. It was an interesting one. And so for the next week as well, we've also got another subscriber topic, so stay tuned for that one. If you do want to submit, all the links are below to our social media, everything like that, so you can get in touch with us and do that, and we'll obviously, as you can see, we will cover the topics for you. But if not, we will see you next week.
See you later.
See you in a bit. Bye-bye.